liberation organizations. This debate was characterized as a choice between what was then called a workerist or charterist approach. Now, the workerist approach was that unions should not be aligned to political organizations, and certainly not the ANC. They argued that the priority of unions should be to build and strengthen shop floor structures and thereby grow their unions. Now, the charterists who were linked to the ANC argued that workers' struggles could not be waged apart from the broader struggle for liberation and urged unions to adopt the Freedom Charter. They argued that by uniting the broadest range of forces across class and race lines against apartheid, unions could advance the interests of their members. This debate featured prominently in efforts to establish a new trade union federation that would bring together the vibrant number of trade unions that had emerged to organize black workers. SACTU, both inside South Africa and in exile, played a huge role in encouraging unions to unite under the banner of a new federation. The unity talks that began in 1979 finally resulted in the formation of COSATU, and on the 1st of December 1985, it can be said that SACTU, when COSATU was formed, SACTU was essentially the midwife that had enhanced the birth of this new federation. From 33 unions representing just under 500,000 workers, COSATU was born. It was founded on the principles of non-racialism, non-sexism, and a commitment to a free, democratic South Africa. Worker control was a crucial founding principle and remains the lifeblood of COSATU and its affiliated unions. The founders of COSATU knew that if leaders were removed from the shop floor, that if workers were alienated from the structures and committees of the Federation, COSATU and its unions would perish. But they also saw the Federation as part of a broader political struggle. As COSATU's official history explains, at its foundation, COSATU faced three interrelated challenges that marked its distinct form of trade unionism. They were first building a strong and militant union movement that would be a home to all workers. Second, representing workers' interests against the employers. And third, challenging the might of the apartheid state. From the start, COSATU blended political and workplace struggles to unify workers and build a strong, vibrant trade union federation. One of the most significant acts in the formative years of COSATU was its adoption, after much debate, of the Freedom Charter as an expression of its political orientation. The National Union of Mine Workers was the first COSATU affiliate to adopt the Freedom Charter and was among those who campaigned for this fundamental document to underpin the political orientation of the Federation. Others argued that the Freedom Charter did not sufficiently articulate the interests of the working class. In 1987, the COSATU Congress formally adopted the Freedom Charter. This established a firm strategic basis for its alliance with the ANC and with the South African Communist Party. The Freedom Charter and its vision of a national democratic society remains the foundation of the alliance to this day. It binds together these three independent formations, each with their own mission and objectives, each with their own policies and strategies, in a shared struggle for a united, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous society. During apartheid, this shared struggle led to joint campaigns, primarily between COSATU and the UDF, against the Bantustans, the black authorities, the local authorities, the tricameral parliament, and the dehumanizing apartheid laws. There was also mobilization in communities in support of workers' struggles, including for the formal recognition of May Day as a public holiday, and for actions like the 1986 railway strike and the 1987 mine workers' strike. After the unbanning of the ANC and the SACP in 1990, this shared history and the common political perspective of all three formations led to the formation of the tripartite alliance. With the end of apartheid and the advent of democracy, the relationship between the ANC and COSATU took on a new significance and had to confront new challenges. The ANC's election platform in 1994 was the Reconstruction and Development Program, the RDP, which was a product of vigorous debates and discussion in the tripartite alliance. To this day, the components of the alliance have developed a common manifesto on which to contest elections. Through this strategic cooperation, the alliance has done much to improve the lives of South Africans. Together, we worked to put in place legislation that protects the dignity and rights of workers. We were united in drawing up one of the most progressive constitutions in the world, a constitution that protects the fundamental rights of South Africans, but also the rights of workers. The ANC and COSATU worked together in drawing up the Labour Relations Act, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, the Employment Equity Act, and many other laws. South African workers are free to form and join trade unions of their choice. They are entitled to all ancillary rights that allow them to freely participate in trade union activity, to elect their shop stewards, and to bargain collectively at the workplace. They are free to strike. The ANC government worked to put in place the National Minimum Wage Act to give effect to a demand that goes back as far as the Congress of the People in 1959 for a national minimum wage for all workers, as enshrined in the Freedom Charter. This process, as in the development of other labor laws, was underpinned by significant engagement and cooperation between the ANC and COSATU. In fact, it was COSATU that campaigned very strongly for the adoption of the national minimum wage. And in this regard, they campaigned for the benefit of all workers in South Africa, whether they are organized in a trade union or not. Since the end of apartheid and with the advent of democracy, many aspects of this relationship have become more complex. The ANC government is one of the biggest employers in the country, and several COSATU affiliates organize government employees. It is therefore possible for ANC deployees in government and representatives of COSATU unions finding themselves on opposite sides of the negotiating table, sometimes in an adversarial environment. Many observers find it difficult to believe that the alliance can continue as it has for the last 26 years of our democracy under such circumstances where they sit together at a table and there's adversity that emerges. There are some who argue that it is because of its alliance with COSATU that the ANC cannot undertake certain reforms for fear of alienating public service unions. And on the other side, there are those who argue that because of its alliance with the ANC, COSATU cannot effectively stand up to government to advance the interests of its members. The proponents of both these arguments fail to understand the strategic foundation of the alliance and how COSATU, the ANC, and the South African Communist Party have developed a political culture that allows the different components of the alliance to manage the differences and contradictions that arise and must arise from time to time. There is a clear understanding that COSATU has a responsibility to advance the material interests of its members in the workplace and more broadly in society. Similarly, there is an understanding that the ANC as the governing party has a responsibility to advance the interests of all South Africans. There is also an understanding that in fulfilling these respective responsibilities and roles, differences between the alliance partners may arise. However, thanks to the institutional architecture of labor relations in South Africa and to the working strategic political relationship that exists through the alliance, it has generally been possible to navigate and resolve these differences. In large measure, this is possible because the alliance between the ANC and COSATU is not a tactical alliance established simply to attain a place in government. It is a strategic alliance in which the partners are involved in the organizational processes of the other. The ANC and COSATU support one another through challenging periods. Recent examples include the task team established by the ANC to assist the Federation with their internal challenges, while COSATU has contributed significantly to the ANC's drive to unite and renew our movement. We readily understand that our strength and coherence as the ANC depends to a great extent on the strength and coherence of both COSATU and the SACP. When COSATU is weak, we argue that that also weakens the ANC. When COSATU is strong, that makes the ANC strong. Now, at the center of this strategic relationship are fundamental values and principles that have ensured its strength and its durability. These include the practice of democracy within all structures and at all times, accountability, as well as inclusiveness, but also respect for one another. These are golden threads that have served us well over many decades and through many demanding and challenging times. Comrades and compatriots, the freedom of workers to organize is a fundamental pillar of our democratic order. It is not merely a legal provision. Rather, it is the fulfillment of a struggle for recognition and basic human rights that goes back more than a century. In the same way, the relationship between the ANC government and worker unions is not merely a structural arrangement defined by regulations and protocols and practices. It is a product of a freedom struggle that has been at the center of the history of modern South Africa. It is a product of the inextricable struggles for national liberation and workers' rights. This is a relationship that has served our people well in the past and which we now look towards as being a relationship that will help us to confront the grave crisis of the present. If we are to emerge from the coronavirus pandemic, and if we are to rebuild our society and our economy, then we need to work together behind a common program of reconstruction. It requires all South Africans, all social partners, all formations to unite in an extraordinary effort to overcome an unprecedented threat. Now, the relationship between government and labor, and specifically the relationship between the ANC and COSATU, is vital to the success of that effort. As we celebrate Workers' Day, let us reflect on the great struggles and the achievements of the past. Let us also reflect on the need to have a strong alliance between the ANC, the SACP, and COSATU. But let us also look to the future, to the life that we want for the workers of our country, and to the tasks that we must undertake now to achieve it. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade President. On behalf of the NYCT, we'd like to thank you for honoring our invite. However, young people have just a few questions that they would like to ask you. While you were speaking, they sent certain questions. The first question, Comrade President, is the President on Freedom Day spoke about the new society. So young people would want to know what is their role in constructing and in consolidating the new society that the President spoke about on Freedom Day.
Wow. We can never have a new society without young people. Young people are clearly the future. The future is dim and dark and does not exist without young people. So young people must be at the leading edge of constructing not only a new society, but a new economy, a transformed economy, a transformed future. They must come forward with ideas of how we craft this new future. Now, I've often said that this coronavirus pandemic that is going to have such a devastating impact, not only on the social life of our people, but on the economy, is almost akin to having a post-war type of situation. And I want people to begin to imagine that post-COVID-19, South Africa confronts a post-war future, a post-war situation. where we have to rebuild. Now, this is not a post-war situation where buildings are destroyed, bridges are destroyed with bombs and everything. We're fighting an invisible enemy that is going to devastate lives and the economy of our country. Does this not give us an opportunity to reimagine a South Africa that is now moving beyond what you could imagine as a post-war situation, where we now have an opportunity to rebuild new bridges, virtual bridges that are going to catapult our people to a better life, new roads that are going to take our people to new destinations, but destinations that are inclusive, destinations that are going to enable people to get jobs, destinations that are going to make our people lead better lives in different spatial environments that have been built and reconstructed. Now, I invite young people to come forward with ideas. I want them to put ideas on the table. What is the future that we should begin to imagine when it comes to our economy, when it comes to the ownership, the control of our economy, when it comes to how the economy should be managed, how our state-owned enterprises should be managed, and how the infrastructure process to rebuild our country can actually be taken forward. Now, every cloud, as they say in the classics, has a silver lining. Is this not a moment when we need to look for that silver lining? Yes, people are getting infected. Yes, people are dying. But should we not, as young people, actively look for that silver lining and say, what does it herald? What does this future herald? So I want young people to come forward and not to sit back, to come forward with new ideas. New technology, the digital age that we are in now, something that young people are so expert at. What does it herald? How do we reconstruct our economy? Do we base it on technology? Do we base it on a whole number of new industries, new sectors of our economy? Young people must come forward with those ideas.
Thank you very much, President. The second question is about the issue of unemployment. So the young people here are saying, what is the plan of the ANC with the possible rise in the number of unemployed young people as a result of COVID-19? We've seen on Twitter a lot of young people have been writing that they are already retrenched as a result of COVID-19. What are plans of the ANC in place?
One of the important tasks that we have as we now move into what I call the third phase. Remember, the first phase was, yes, shutting down our economy. The second phase was moving towards easing the restrictions. And the third phase is going to be coming up with a clear strategy of our economic future. And this is where I also want young people to come forward with ideas. Yes, we do have ideas. We're facing what I call a post-war situation. We've got to, one, protect jobs that could be lost. We've got to create jobs. And we've already started to take steps with the social and economic relief package that we announced, which other people call stimulus package, worth about 500 billion. And if you take into account what the central bank and them have done, it could be up 800 billion. Part of that process is to protect jobs. Yes, of course, to bring relief to our people, but also to protect jobs, but also to create jobs. We've said that we will want to have 100 billion rand to begin the process of creating jobs. But we are also going to be looking at how we create jobs through infrastructure build. We already have a number of projects that are ready to be taken forward, because after a war situation, all hands have to be on deck. All sectors need to work together. Now, I'm looking forward to forging a new social compact. And may I add that the term new social compact was also coined by our social partners, labor and business. They said we need a new social compact. A new social compact that will be underpinned by how we protect jobs, we create jobs, and we ensure that we strengthen those sectors of our economy that have been weakened by coronavirus, and we ensure that we strengthen the small, medium enterprises that have now come into their own, the informal businesses, the spaza shops in our townships that have come into their own, how we begin to generate local production. And we're already beginning to see the genesis of all that, our people's creativity, as they begin to say, yes, we now have to start creating locally made goods, and that is what we want to focus attention on. And that is where we want to create jobs, and young people now need to play a role with regard to that. And if we look at some of the announcements we made at the beginning of the year about focusing more and more attention on creating jobs for young people, that is the direction in which we are going. And I want to see great job creation activity through the various sectors of our economy for young people, for women in our country. And I just want to see South Africa getting back to work, with many of our people getting engaged in economic activity. And it also gives us an opportunity to form new sectors of our economy. And young people need to come forward to play a key role in those sectors and to create those sectors. And this is where I want to see innovation, creativity, new ideas that will be coming forward from young people. So, in the end, it is not the ANC government's role alone. It is a societal role. All of us have to play a role in crafting this new future that is calling us and is heralding us.
One last question. Last question, President. The young people are asking about, or in fact, the first comment is saying that we thank the ANC and the government for the efforts they've put in place to make sure that they fight against gender-based violence. Yes. But now gender-based violence has seen a rise during the lockdown period. So what is it that the ANC is going to do and the government is going to do in making sure that we support the victims of gender-based violence and we kind of like change the mindset of the men and society?
Well, that is a very good question. Yesterday we launched and I received the National Strategic Plan that was in drafting since 2018 when we held our presidential gender-based violence summit. Now, we've had a steering committee of absolutely outstanding women of our country, both young and middle-aged and old, drafting this strategic plan. They've presented it. And the key elements of this plan is prevention, that we must find ways and embark on ways to prevent gender-based violence. Now, I'm filled with shame that during this time of COVID-19, when South Africans are fighting for their lives, literally fighting to stay alive, men still find reason to exercise violence against women and children. I find it quite something that's unacceptable. And this is the time when men should be giving much more respect to women, even as they are at home. This is when we should be concentrating on applauding the respect of our women, honoring our women, and being at home to be the fathers of our children, the husbands and lovers of the women of our country. But instead of doing that, we hear many reported cases of gender-based violence. That is totally unacceptable, and it is something that we must root out of South African society. The scourge of gender-based violence must be rooted out. Therefore, one of the key things is prevention. We've got to launch massive campaigns to rid men of this notion of patriarchy, this notion of thinking that men own women, that they control women, that they can do anything with women, and they can do anything they like against the bodies of women. We need to rid men of that. Men need to know that they are just as equal as women in the eyes of our Constitution and even in the eyes of God. Now, prevention has to be the way to go. But then, this prevention process is a societal task. It's not only a task of a few people who are either in leadership position or whatever. It is a societal task. As a society, we must be saying we will not tolerate any man perpetrating any violence against the women of our country. We must put our foot down that this we are not going to tolerate. And one of the preventative measures is obviously to strengthen our criminal justice system. Men must know that when you raise your hand against a woman, when you violate a woman, when you rape a woman, when you kill a woman, you are going to go to jail. And you are going to go to jail and spend the rest of your life in jail. And that you will not get bail. Now, that must be inculcated in the minds of men. We must also heighten our level of protection against women who are abused and make sure that they have shelters, they have places of refuge to go to. I complained to those who drafted the National Strategic Plan that I don't believe that the Tutuzela centers that they're talking about to have by 2025, 100 of them are enough. I want to see more Tutuzela centers so that women do not have to travel for long distances to get a place of refuge, to get a place where they can be counseled. Our police stations must be properly equipped with test kits, and all those various measures need to be put in place. Now, implementation of our National Strategic Plan obviously is going to play a key role in all this to ensure that we rid our country of the scourge of gender-based violence. And if we embark on implementing that strategic plan, and we will resource it, we will make sure that the resources are in place, because we can no longer continue having more than half of our population, the women of our country, being fearful to walk around in the streets of our country, in the pathways of our country, for fear that they may be raped, they may be killed, they may be assaulted. This has to come to an end, and we will be giving strong leadership in making sure that indeed the women of our country are honored, they are respected, and they are treated as well as we want them to be treated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President, and beyond the NYTT, we'd like to thank you very much, and may God bless you and give you more strength while you carry South Africa on your shoulders during this trying time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Good. Thank you. So I can go home now.
No, President. We're doing the newsroom one.
Oh, yes, of course.
It's just congratulatory. Is the 1 year anniversary?
Yes, and I'll be very brief.
We're cutting,
Yeah.
we're shooting. I mean, it's for newsroom.
No, not live, not live. Not live, the live, please.
Is that what I'm saying? Are we off air?
Yes.
But now we're off. We're off.
Oh, thank God.